All right, and we are live. Welcome. This is the first podcast, episode, part, whatever you want to call it, of working name TMI.
Yep. Haven't come up with the actual words to fill in the acronym yet, but that's what we're working with so far. Could change in the future. We don't know.
Yeah, so I am your first co-host, Jacob. I am joined by our second co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Cyrus. That is my name. I am the second co-host of this podcast, which is, we're really just starting out, and things might change later on. We might change some stuff up, but right now we're just talking.
Yeah, right now we're just figuring out. So we're not going to be very good at this. This is our first time ever doing a podcast, and we just wanted to try our hand at it. So today's topic for TMI is superpowers, which ones are better than others, and if there is a best superpower without any asterisks or like additional powers that you just kind of assume come along with them.
Yeah, because if you think about superpowers that people think would be awesome, if you really start thinking about them in reality, they're much different and would require sort of what I call asterisks, or what we call asterisks, which are required secondary powers in order to make it not kill you in horrible and horrifying ways.
Yes. So you had an example of one of these asterisk superpowers, and I forget what it was. Do you remember?
It was stopping time, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
Which sounds great, to be able to stop time. I think I was obsessed with that power for a while. I would just think about it whenever I would daydream, where if I was in this moment, if I could stop time but I would still be able to move, what would I be able to do? And it sounds great in theory, but if you think about it, there are a lot of problems that come with it, such as you wouldn't be able to see necessarily because photons aren't moving and going into your eyes. You wouldn't be able to move because you're walking into stationary atoms. And yeah, you would age during the time. No one else would. So if you, I don't know, spend third of your life in that stopped, sort of while time is stopped, then you'd be 1/3 older than everyone else, which would add up throughout the years, and you'd have gray hair when you're 40.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, that's one of those asterisk superpowers, and we have been discussing off podcast how some of those asterisks, like the ability to move and have kind of time move around you, and if you're moving into atoms, that's actually stationary atoms, you're just creating fusion, at which point bad things will happen. The universe won't be very happy with you. So we were kind of discussing how stopping time you could kind of think of time as a fluid, a river almost. How think of all existence as this great valley, and time is an infinite number of rivers moving through this valley, and being able to stop time would be kind of like freezing this river and freezing this fluid around you, and how you would be perhaps a piece of charcoal being dropped in that frozen river, melting, in a sense, the frozen time around you, allowing you to move, and the particles around in a close vicinity around you to move, but everybody else stays frozen.
Yeah.
Now, this doesn't get around the fact that everybody would stop aging and you would continue aging, but it does mean that you're no longer, breaking as many rules of the universe, I suppose. So that's one of those asterisk powers, and that's one of the ways you can think about stopping time and how to kind of get around that. But again, that has those asterisks of time being unfrozen in a close, like a bubble around you.
Yeah, you're sort of covered in like if you're a piece of charcoal in the frozen river, like if that doesn't work for you, then you're sort of covered in a blanket of time moving, but the blanket is like skin tight, and so time moves like very close to you but nowhere else. And so I don't know, that would raise some problems, I guess, if you're trying to touch or move stationary objects that are larger than the moving river around you. Maybe that would raise some issues, but if you can just move around and stop time, like I feel like many people would be okay with that.
Yeah.
Just as a power.
Yeah. Once again, those are those many asterisks. Where one of my favorite superpowers that I don't believe involves many asterisks is teleportation.
Yeah. Jacob's a fan of teleportation. I wasn't really, because I thought like transportation really isn't one of my life's biggest worries. But I don't really spend much of my life in a car as he does. and so I can understand where he's coming from.
Should we make mention that we are in fact high school students?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we're high school students.
Yes. So these are going to be very, amateur, I guess you could say, ideas and thoughts. So it's really just putting them out there in the world. But yeah, so I spend a good amount of time in the car because where I go to school is an hour away from where I live. I won't mention any names because the internet and all that. But so I spend a decent amount of time in the car because all my friends are an hour away, my school's an hour away. So the idea of teleportation is very nice to me. And it's another one of those superpowers that really doesn't have a lot of asterisks around it. Granted, I guess the primary one would be, what kind of teleportation. And when I think about it, there are two main kinds, and that would be matter reconstruction, or reconstruction rather, or wormhole. And to think about this, to put this in contemporary terms, you could say matter reconstruction is kind of like the Star Trek transporter, where wormhole is more of like a Doctor Strange or Big Hero 6 style of teleportation.
Oh, right. Big Hero 6 used that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very underappreciated movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was great. But that's not the topic for today.
That's another topic for another day. But matter deconstruction, reconstruction, teleportation is the idea that you deconstruct whatever you're trying to teleport, transport the matter to a different location via, I don't know, like cable, like fiber optic cable, I guess, something like that. And then at the new location, the matter is reconstructed into an identical copy of whatever you're trying to transport. If it's a rock, same structure of the rock, or if it's human, hopefully, that same human and that continues to be alive and retain all of their memories.
Yeah, I don't know. The biggest asterisk for me in teleportation is the sense of identity, but I'll get through that after you explain the Doctor Strange.
And then we come to wormhole teleportation, which is, if we think of space-time as a piece of paper, it's bending that piece of paper so 2 points are right next to each other, and then you put a little pin pick through, and you can travel back and forth. So, kind of like what happens in Doctor Strange, where he opens up the portals with his sling ring, or in Big Hero 6 with the Silent Sparrow teleporters. I prefer this method because it has a lot less can go wrong. I mean, a lot can still go wrong, but a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, you're still talking about wormholes, but at least you're not talking about breaking down the atoms of your body.
Yes. So a lot less can go wrong, and, it would make a lot of things a lot easier. Shipping would be a lot easier. Just people's day-to-day lives, being able to get from one place to another rather quickly just means a lot less time. Cars or ships and planes would become obsolete. A lot less pollution because of it. You wouldn't need to manufacture gasoline or cars or anything for that matter. Granted, that could really mess up the global economy, but this is...
Oh, yes.
We're talking about teleportation here, so that's kind of a big what if. But...
Yeah.
Some of the ups and downs of these two methods, I mean, as we mentioned previously, matter deconstruction, reconstruction means that, if you're reconstructing a person, there's a very high likelihood, I'm saying very high, I don't actually have any statistics to back this up, but there's a non-zero chance, I would imagine, that, the thing you're reconstructing isn't reconstructed properly. And if you're doing something like a brick, that's not a big deal, it's a brick. But if you're doing
it's still going to build a wall.
But if you're doing something like, say, a human, and you don't reconstruct them properly, well, then you have issues, and I would assume lawsuits.
Yes, and that, I mean, it depends on which part isn't being reconstructed properly, because, like, if someone loses a finger, then, like, that's a problem, you should get that sorted out. But if part of your brain changes, brain chemistry, or, like, any synapses in your brain get messed up because of that teleportation, then your brain is sort of where you keep who you are, and so that's going to mess you up whether or not you're still the same person after the teleportation is going to be up in the air. And also with deconstruction, reconstruction, what I think is that, or what comes to mind is that, like, if you break down the atoms of someone's body and then reconstruct them, even if you reconstruct them perfectly, is that person still you? A sort of Ship of Theseus-ish sort of question.
And, I don't want to dive too deep into the whole Ship of Theseus thing.
Oh, no, neither do I.
Yeah, because both of us have strong disliking for that whole thought experiment, and that might be a topic for another day if we're feeling adventurous.
Yeah.
Um,
If we hate ourselves, we can do that.
if we are in a particular self-hating mood.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion for another day. So with those big asterisks around matter deconstruction, reconstruction, it just seems like wormholes are a better way of going. And the amount of energy required, for either one would be monstrous,
Astronomical.
beyond our capabilities today.
Oh, yeah.
But I like to think of matter reconstruction, deconstruction, reconstruction. Rather, I need to get that right. I will get it right one day.
Yeah, that can be your superpower.
But that's kind of like an interest, kind of like increasing interest kind of thing, where wormholes are kind of a flat rate, where teleporting a rock, like a pebble, with deconstruction, reconstruction would require a lot less energy than opening up a wormhole and tossing the pebble through. But if you wanted to say move it like a shipping container, I would assume, I again don't have any numbers because this is all theoretical.
Yeah.
Moving a deconstruction, reconstruction, moving a shipping crate would probably be a lot more energy than just opening up a wormhole big enough for one to move through. So you have to look at what you're moving and where you want to move it to, and the energy required for that. But on just a person-to-person basis, the ability to open wormholes would, just make one lives very easy, assuming that the wormhole, doesn't swallow the world or something. Yeah. So.
Okay, you brought up something earlier that I thought was interesting, which is when you said how it would affect the economy if everyone had teleportation, and so I feel like it's a very different sort of thought experiment if you think if I had this power versus if everyone had this power, because
That's very true.
Teleportation, like, you would just be the only one who could teleport, everyone would still have cars, but if everyone could teleport, you'd have to have systems in place, like every place would have, it would be like the Flu Powder network in Harry Potter. You'd have to have set places in each location where people could teleport to, and again, it would affect the economy massively.
I mean, there's also what's the thing you can do once you turn like 18 or 17? Apparate.
Yeah, exactly.
So that I never really got that in Harry Potter. Why they needed Flu Powder if people could just apparate?
Because apparating is dangerous. You can splint yourself. Like it's basically like deconstruction, reconstruction, but like poorly done because you're the one in control while you're teleporting. So if you don't have that sort of mentality, then you can kill yourself.
I guess that's true.
Pretty easily.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm not super well versed in Harry Potter, so.
The worst thing you can do with Flu Powder is turn up a Nocturne Alley, and because if you say something incorrectly.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is getting kind of off topic. I mean, but
yeah,
that's to be expected. So, back to superpowers and asterisks. So we were discussing, what would be the best superpower that didn't require those asterisks. So we think we've nailed it down to probably teleportation. But, we just discussed some of those, so.
Yeah.
So what are some other ones, do you think, that would be, good superpowers without all those asterisks?
Okay, well, let's go down the common ones. People like flight. People are a big fan of flight. People are obsessed with flight, actually. For centuries in humans. But, okay, so you have to think about what kind of flight.
True.
Would you be able to levitate? Is it really just glorified levitating, or do you have to actually put effort into it? Would it be like a type of exercise, really, like flapping your arms like birds do, or do you just Superman style it out of the window?
Yeah, kind of like the old joke, I just flew in from Philadelphia, and boy, my arms are tired, kind of thing.
Like, would your arms actually be tired?
Yeah, so, would it be like a physical thing? So, those are a couple of those asterisks for flight. Also, you have to think about, pressure differences between, on the ground versus the ozone layer.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest problems with climbing Everest, other than it's a bloody tall mountain, is that, you run out of oxygen once you get near the top. And, when you also look cold, as we've seen in Iron Man, and just in general, getting up in that, that high in the atmosphere, you drop temperature, you've got thinner oxygen and air, and just
And you feel that in a plane, just when you go on an airplane.
Yeah, the pressure differences, they have to have pressurized cabins and, insulated cabins, so...
Also, how do you see when you're flying? Like, depending on how fast you're flying, human eyes really aren't made to withstand, I don't know, a lot of speed. Like, you're looking directly into a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
And trying to, like, still perceive things fine.
Yeah,
that would be difficult.
I would imagine I imagine flying would be a lot like skiing without goggles.
Yeah.
Because, you're moving very quickly, it's very cold, you don't have a lot of, oxygen at your disposal, and, you've got that wind battering your skin and your eyes, and it's just, I imagine it would be rather difficult. You need something special to, to keep yourself safe in those conditions, and at that point you're just a small one-man plane, essentially.
Yeah, you're just
that doesn't require...
your personal drone.
Yeah, that doesn't require gas.
And again, if we look at the mass, everyone having it versus just you having it, flight is one of the biggest examples of that. If you could fly, and just you could fly, things are pretty okay as long as you get rid of all those asterisks. But if everyone can fly, it's just like cars in the air, really. You have to have systems, you have to have traffic lights. Like, you couldn't just have chaos in the city, everyone flying to their work.
I mean, a person running into another person, depending on the speed, isn't as bad as, say, a plane versus a plane.
True.
Because the size of the objects colliding and the speed at which...
Surprise mid-air hug.
Yeah. We can look at something like Dragon Ball Z if you want, like...
Oh, I don't know Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, well, basically people can fly. Oh. I don't know why. They never really explain why, just being really strong means you can levitate.
Oh, of course.
But that's one of those powers that, it's got those asterisks, is where if you, thinking about it, being able to fly is really cool, but,
Mm-hmm.
What does that actually mean? What comes along with it? What are some other ones, like...
Super strength.
Super strength, yeah.
Which is, it's really vague, if you're thinking about it. Like,
yeah.
It's hard to nail down those asterisks, because you're not really sure what super strength necessarily means.
Does that mean, like, super strength, you can think of as, like, bodybuilders have super strength, but they also have to have, like, insane muscles to be able to move that amount of, that... all that matters. So are your muscles just more dense? Can they do more with less, as it were?
Yeah.
What happens when you tear stuff and...
Oh yeah, that'd be horrible. Yeah, there's a reason that the human body was not meant to lift cars, and that's because the human body was not meant to lift cars. And so if your superpower is being able to lift cars, then you have to really think about how that's going to affect your body, and if the superpower actually affects it on that bodily level, or if it's just going to be like, hey, you can lift a car, have fun with having no arms for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and also sustaining that strength. Is that is it just a perpetual thing? Are you just naturally that strong?
Yeah, do you still have to go to the gym? Yeah,
and do you have to feed that energy? Because moving that much matter and moving muscles is like the pneumatics on a backhoe. There's an immense amount of force that needs to be generated, and that energy has to come from somewhere. So do you have to eat more to sustain that level of energy to move that much?
Yeah. This is why I feel super strength is pretty vague. Like, people say super strength, I could punch a wall and stuff, but it's
also what happens to your skin? Being able to punch down a wall is all fine and dandy until you realize that's an insane amount of contact with your skin.
Yep.
And you'll bloody your I'm not gonna just go and punch a concrete wall and my knuckles will be destroyed. And does super strength mean super strong muscles? Then what happens to your bones?
Exactly.
There are plenty of cases where professional athletes will hurt themselves, not because they tore muscles, but because they broke bones under the immense strength. Your skeletal structure also insanely strong?
Yeah.
The muscles will stay intact, but they'll just they'll squeeze so hard they just break the bone.
I feel like the superpowers that are body enhancements or body changes are really the ones with the most asterisks, inevitably, because your human body was meant, and you have evolved to do exactly what you're doing right now. You can train to get better at it, but if you can run, then you were meant to run, and if you have super speed, then you weren't meant to run that fast. So you should probably ease it down on the body enhancements superpowers.
I agree with you. I think they're very vague in how they actually affect your body.
Yeah.
So, you just mentioned super speed, something like the Flash or Quicksilver. And something that I always like to talk about when talking about super speed is time dilation.
Ooh.
Because basically, the faster you go, the slower you are affected by time. That's why astronauts are affected differently because they're moving at such a rapid pace.
Yeah.
And why this time dilation would mean that you age as long as you're going faster and faster, the slower you will age, and things will move faster around you, as it were. So you are effectively moving through time slower than the people around you. So how does that affect your life?
Yeah. It also affects mass, if I'm not misremembering, because if you think E is equal to mc squared,
That's true. Yeah.
then it's you'd have to become more massive the faster you go. If I'm not messing that up, I might be messing that up, so we're not going to get more into that
Yeah.
particular one.
I mean,
just if you go really simple, there's friction.
yeah, friction indeed. Like at what point are you just
Depending.
moving against the air so quickly that you just like rip apart your body? I mean, they kind of explain that way in the Flash, where he's supposed to have this like his suit is supposed to like reduce the amount of friction produced, but I mean you're still
Also Dash from The Incredibles.
yeah. I mean, true. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
seen The Incredibles in a while, so
That's
not
that's a
fresh in
shame.
my mind.
Yeah.
But no, just the amount of air you're displacing, you're gonna create friction, you're gonna create drag, and you're gonna produce heat on yourself. But you're also going to moving the air around you could have serious effects on the atmosphere around you
Yeah.
as you're moving.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why when a car going faster than you goes by you, it kind of rattles your car.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's displacing that air, and that displaced air has to go somewhere.
Yep. Every time you're driving next to a truck, you know exactly how that feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
What's another? Ooh, invisibility.
Oh, invisibility.
How do people
Ooh.
feel about invisibility? Because
Oh.
everyone loves invisibility, right?
One, I've never gotten why invisibility is very practical, because you're still there,
Yeah.
and you can still make physical contact.
Mm-hmm. I guess I don't know.
And is it like
Harry Potter would be a big fan of it, but
I mean, well, that's the thing. It does invisibility as in invisibility, cloak invisibility, or Incredibles invisibility, where your physical body can become invisible.
that's where I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know in the Incredibles, her suit is designed to work with her power, so
become invisible with her. Yeah.
Yeah. Where in Harry Potter, just put on the cloak, and are we talking about like, and what kind of invisibility are we talking about? Like,
Yeah.
I know in the Avengers, the helicarriers are invisible, functionally invisible, because they
Masking technology.
yeah, it's like an advanced form of camouflage almost.
Yeah, which is really like the version of invisibility that has the least
The
problems. With
the
with
least
physics.
asterisks to it, and physics, and I'm not very well versed in how the science of that actually works, because I don't
think Marvel is either.
I know that there is actually some sound science behind that version of invisibility, that advanced camouflage, but I'm not really sure, because I think it has to do with like LED displays, and like basically
and
you're
taking like only reflecting
Yeah.
certain wavelengths, but I'm not,
Yeah.
not really sure how that.
yeah, I'm not
supposed
sure
to
how
work.
that works. So that's another one of those, like that's more of like a thing of science. So
yeah,
and I'm not.
if we were well versed in it, we could probably discuss like if you just yourself become invisible, that sort of classic invisibility.
Mhm.
Then we could probably more possibly discuss like photons, like how they pass through you, and that sort of thing. If we were more well versed in that, but yeah, invisibility is one that you have to think pretty hard about.
Yeah, how that would work. So
Yeah.
again, more asterisks is, as it were, and if anybody is more well versed in this stuff than us, feel free to share your ideas in the comments.
We would love that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of this is to just promote discussion, I guess you could say. That's the main purpose, and it just really gives us a chance to talk about some of the harebrained ideas that we have on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So
And we're starting the superpowers because there's already plenty of discussion on superpowers. We're just adding our little 2 cents and giving our thoughts about it.
Yeah, so once again, this is our opinions. That's why I keep saying I'm not very well versed in this, and I don't know the science behind it, because opinions, and that I think that should be a pretty big disclaimer for this entire series. Is unless I say that I have a specific thing that I'm citing, most of this or almost all of this is going to be opinion based,
and just like what we know so far. Like we didn't research this.
Yeah, no, this is
we didn't look up superpowers and required secondary superpowers. We didn't go on tvtropes.com or anything.
Yeah. So opinions.
Yeah.
Don't get I guess you can get mad at us for our opinions.
Oh, feel free. That's
the
point.
No. But try to keep it a civil discourse, I would say.
Okay. Got any seconded? Got any more superpowers? We've got super speed, invisibility, super strength, teleportation, flight,
stopping time.
Yeah, that was always my favorite. I'm sad to see that go.
Yeah. I guess you could talk about, control over different things, like control over gravity or, like fire.
Oh yeah, like would that be a method for flight? Control over gravity. I guess that would sort of encompass flight, but
yeah,
be more helpful.
Yeah, controlling gravity is one that's always intrigued me ever since I was little, and I say that like I'm older, but I'm like I'm still a teen. But but I guess it still applies ever since I was a kid. Controlling gravity, I mean, it's always been a thing that I've been interested in.
See, I would never want that power because I'd be terrified. Like controlling gravity, I'd end up on the ceiling and having no way to get down, and God forbid if I was outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I don't trust myself enough to give me that power.
I first got interested in, controlling gravity superpower from Bionicles, actually.
Oh, jeez, that's a
throwback
that's
to
a hell of a callback.
2005. But yeah, no, one of like the villain Bionicles were like these little rolling ball things, and I remember that one of them had the power to control gravity. There was like this group of 4 or 5 that were like elite. And they had, like, control over time and gravity and stuff.
Ooh.
So, gravity dilation, like, how extensive are your powers in that? Like, can you, and, like, just, what does it mean to control gravity? Does that mean you're just increasing the mass of the, area around a specific thing? Like,
oh, so you're not reversing gravity, you can just control gravity.
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to very simply put, reverse gravity, I mean... Is it only affecting that one person, or like just like a pillar throughout all of existence? And at that point, does like the entire ground just reverse?
Yeah, because if it was a pillar, then like it would affect the opposite side of the wherever you're like. If you're doing it straight up, if you're just levitating your computer, then God forbid whoever's on the other side of the earth just sitting down.
Yeah, or you just say, like tap your like a brick or something. I'm just gonna go with a brick because it's pretty easy to imagine a brick.
Yes.
Just like touch it and say, boom, this is no longer affected by normal gravity. It's like it's on the moon or something, and you can just move it around as if it was on the moon.
Yeah. Do you have to go to the moon and tap it again in order to make it fall back down?
I don't think so.
Damn.
Otherwise, that'd be very impractical. Yeah, does it... Yeah. At that point, are you then changing the density of that object?
Yeah, that's true.
And, say, oh, I want that person to be,
I feel like that would be the easiest way to go about it. Changing the densities.
So, rather than changing the forces affected, but rather the density of stuff, so...
Yeah, because you don't want to mess with the force, physical forces, because that would be...
We do not have a deep enough understanding of how gravity or anything fundamental like that works. Yet. To really understand, how effective that would be.
But densities change all the time. No universe could bother with that.
It's much easier to wrap one's head around the idea of changing the density of an object.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to get in, the semantics around, what constitutes as that object, and if you change the density of a person, does that also change the clothes that they're wearing?
Ooh.
Or are they just, they just constantly feel like they're being pulled up, but the clothes are keeping them down on the ground because the clothes' density didn't change.
Ooh.
So then you're just
wow. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. So I was about to say I didn't even think of people wearing clothes, but that's a bit of a
that's a different show.
Yeah.
In the words of Mrs. Michaels. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah, changing densities. Yeah, you'd have to affect everything that the person you'd have to have a pretty, I'm gonna say, intimate view of what the person is wearing, because if they could have like a pocket watch. Yeah, in one of their pockets, be like, okay, that person and their clothes, and it's like, oh, sorry, the pocket watch screwed you.
Yeah, it's like
they're on the ground.
I mean, yeah. So you really have to be careful with like, because a lot of people wouldn't really think about this, and say we're being nitpicky, but the difference between being nitpicky and not can really that could change the fate of the world when it comes to things like gravity.
Yeah.
So
that's the nitpicky details are where the genies get you when you're making your wishes.
Yeah.
That's why you need a lawyer, a genie lawyer. But
are those what genealogists are? No, I know what a genealogist is. Please don't. No, I'm not that dumb. That was a joke for all those out there who are ready to rage at me in the comments. If we even have
they're raging at you just because of that joke.
I mean, probably, but moving on.
But would that also change the density of I don't know, the density of what you are is density of a brain. That would be the number of connections. Can you imagine changing the density of people's inner organs? What are you changing the density of if you change the density of a person? Because that could get messy, very fast.
Yes. Again, those asterisks.
Yep, they pop up.
And we could always go the Gardevoir route in Pokemon and just say, they can open up black holes, but that's...
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, we could go simpler and just open up some black holes. Just some miniature ones.
Yeah, that's basically what it does.
Ooh. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get into black holes.
What about, X-Men, psychic abilities?
Psychic abilities. Ooh. Well, ooh.
We have telekinesis.
We already... Oh, telekinesis. People like that, and I'm not really sure what the asterisks would be, because it's just...
Yeah,
it's such a fantastical power. It's something that's not really based off of reality, that,
Yeah, how
controlling things with your mind. What does that mean?
Yeah, how do you... How does telekinesis work, I guess, is, what we're trying to get at here.
How do you get into the nitty-gritty details, nitpicky details, the asterisks of something that it really isn't based off of anything in reality. Super strength, they're oh, well, they are bodybuilders, we can sort of understand, but controlling things with your mind, concentrate really hard, I guess?
But, what force is acting on that object, what force is your mind producing to move that object, and, what are the limitations of that?
Yeah. Can you only lift what you'd be able to lift if you were right next to it? Can you train to be able to lift more eventually? Can you lift infinite amounts of weight theoretically? It's tough.
And, so, how does telekinesis really work? And then we get into things like mind reading under the whole blanket statement of, psychic abilities.
God, I've never actually wanted to be able to mind read, just because there are thoughts that everyone has invasive thoughts.
That's true.
And if you just happen to read someone's mind while they're having one of those invasive thoughts, I'd really like to kill the person sitting next to me right now, then you're oh, okay, that person's a very different person than what I expected, but they're really not.
Yeah.
You have your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors, and these are the triangle of who you are, but you can only really control your behaviors. So if I was mind reading, also another question, would they come up in actual sentences? Because I'm not sure how many people think in actual sentences. I mean, I tend to, but some people think in a more ethereal way.
Yeah, I guess would mind reading only be effective for constructed thoughts that you have in your mind, not the subconscious
declarative thoughts, you're thinking this right now.
Yeah. I would think that it only applies to that realm, because I believe, I don't have any studies that I can cite, but I believe I've heard that when you're I almost said thinking out loud, talking to yourself in your head,
oh yeah, you still have those.
You still have
those movements in your throat.
Yeah, you still have throat movements as if you were going to say that. So is that just really targeted super hearing?
Yeah. Ooh.
So
that would be interesting.
And that opens up the door to another superpower of super hearing or super senses.
Yeah. But if we stick on psychic abilities for a moment, then if it was actually just constructed thoughts, then how much of just a party trick would your power turn into? Because I'm not sure. If you're trying to go up against a supervillain, how many henchmen are going to be thinking constructed thoughts I need to protect this person in this prison on this floor, and this is
Yeah.
what the map looks like in my head.
Yeah, like, yeah, if we're talking about simply constructed thoughts, you know, and if we go to outside of like, yeah, it wouldn't be very practical if it was just constructed thoughts, is what I'm trying to say here in a
Mhm.
very roundabout way. But if we get into the realm of, you know, more than just constructed thoughts, well, you know, how is your mind supposed to, understand what the abstract thoughts that the other person is thinking?
Yeah,
and
how are you
put that,
supposed to comprehend those? Oh, I mean, you could.
because a lot of that.
How about you turn psychic ability into heightened empathy, a type of empathy where you can sort of feel what the person is thinking right then, and like even if you don't know what they're thinking, you can feel what they're feeling, sort of.
So, kind of like the D&D skill sense motive.
Sure.
All right.
Also, not a big I haven't played many sessions of D&D in my life, so.
Yeah. But
Nor Bionicles.
yeah, they're a bit of a throwback. But I mean, the sense motive skill basically means you roll a d20, and depending on your modifier, you're able to basically guess at what the person is trying to do or thinking or feeling.
Sense motive. Okay, yes.
So, you know,
So that would be neat. I feel like that would be more helpful than reading constructive thoughts, because like
Yeah.
and not constructive, constructed. I'm sure plenty of constructed thoughts are not constructive.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had constructed thoughts where I wouldn't want someone reading my mind either. Not because they're like, oh, they'd sense my hidden motive or anything, but because I'm like in a bad place.
Yeah.
And so like, plenty of times where I wouldn't want people to read my mind, even though I'm feeling like no ill will against them. They'd still construe it. So like, I feel like that's why I've never wanted to be mind read, because I'd sort of mess up my images of everyone based on something that's really not in their control.
Yeah, definitely.
It's-
I think that's definitely
Yeah.
a good way of thinking about it.
So like, I feel like empathy would be heightened empathy would be really cool actually, though, because like you could get the constructed thoughts, but you could also get where they're coming from.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a much more practical way of approaching, you know, psychic abilities as far as mind reading goes.
Yeah, you could
And-
also probably see the images that they're imagining, if they're imagining anything.
That would, yeah,
Like,
possibly.
like you see into their imagination as
Yeah.
well as their thoughts. That'd be
That-
interesting.
That would be interesting. It could also get to some really dark places real quick, depending on the person.
God, yes.
So it'd be something that you'd have to tread lightly.
Tread lightly, indeed.
Um,
That's
maybe that should be the name of our podcast.
Tread lightly. I mean, it's pretty much the theme of this episode.
Yeah.
You want
yeah.
superpowers? Tread lightly.
Basically, maybe maybe that will be what
we call it.
What we call it.
Look at
definitely.
that.
Yeah. So, and then we just briefly mentioned, you know, heightened senses. And,
Yeah, heightened senses.
you know, the resolution of an eyeball, and, you know, like, what does it mean to have super hearing? Does that mean, like, does that just mean, you know, your inner ear is extra sensitive, your eardrum's extra
Yeah.
sensitive? Because that means, you know,
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
a lot of terrible things could happen like that.
ear infections,
Ear infection.
calcium
ooh.
carbonate crystals becoming way more of a problem
Yeah.
if they get into your inner ear and start causing mayhem.
Definitely, and, you know,
Vertigo would be horrible.
Ooh, vertigo would be bad.
Oh my God. Airplane trips.
Oh God, that's terrible. Oh God. Yeah. So, you know, another, you know, contemporary example, I guess you could say, is Daredevil, because, you know, he's blind, but he fights using his enhanced senses,
Right.
most particularly that of hearing. You know,
Mhm.
he uses his sense of smell and taste and hearing to kind of construct this imaginary world. And, you know, I'm going off of the Marvel TV series Daredevil, because that's just the most recent.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and they describe it as kind of a world on fire, this kind of fluid world that, you know, you can
Yeah.
sort of imagine. So, you know, and if we bring it back to sight as well, you know, another contemporary example, I guess you could say, would be that of Legolas in Lord of the Rings. You know, what do your elven eyes see?
Oh,
And
right.
what's the science behind that? And
He's an elf.
he's an
Science
elf.
ended.
Yeah. I mean,
There's-
yeah. I mean, and there is science behind, you know, the resolution in which our eyes can see and all of that, but once again, I'm not very well versed. It would require additional research,
Which
you
we
know.
did not do before doing this podcast.
which we did not do, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, if you go Daredevil, like, he lost one sense, so his other senses were heightened, like, that's one way to go about it if you're really desperate and
Yeah.
with minimal body enhancements that your human body was not made for. Like, just pick your favorite sense that you really want and just kill all the other ones.
Yeah.
That's
As a podcast, we are not condoning the self-harm
yes,
involved
no.
in producing super senses. Please do not take Daredevil as an example. Please do not, so
take
your
Cyrus
eyes
as-
shut or something to get super hearing.
Yes, please do not. We do not condone that sort of behavior.
No.
If you do it, tell us how it went.
Yes, if you just start typing a random mess of numbers and letters, people will assume that's what you did.
Yes.
I guess a Braille
We'll hear
keyboard-
you loud and clear, because we still have our hearing.
Yes, I guess you could get a Braille keyboard, but we're getting into the semantics of semantics, and that's a rabbit hole. That's like Inception level stuff here. So, all those asterisks. What's the science behind super senses, and how simple something like you couldn't fly on planes anymore because your inner ear would just be so distraught.
Yes.
The idea
distraught
of
would be
it.
very precise language for that feeling.
So,
Ooh.
yeah, because if you've ever been on a plane when you have a head cold, it feels like your face is going to explode.
Yes.
Like, I had a head cold and I was flying once, and it felt like the entire right side of my face was just going to burst, and it was not a pleasant feeling.
Not fun. Yeah, I've been on enough plane rides in my life. I know what that feels like.
Yeah, like, granted that's more of your sinuses than your inner ear, but still, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not a fun feeling.
it's all fluids.
Yeah. So.
And you also, there are more senses than just your five senses.
Oh, yeah.
The common senses. Like, you also have, like, a sense of time, a sense of balance. Like, if you had heightened senses, would those be affected too? Like, would you be the world's greatest tightrope walker?
Definitely.
Which wouldn't be a bad superpower. It depends on what you want your life to be.
yeah, and you've got to think about how these superpowers work, but also the practicality of some of them. Like how could you apply them in your day-to-day life, or something like flight or teleportation? When you get past all the asterisks, they could be pretty practical, but
depending on whether the local police is okay with you being able to fly, and if the military wants to recruit you, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
How the FAA feels about you
once you come out of
fly.
once you come out of the superpower closet. Then what happens to you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heightened senses would be pretty practically helpful.
You think so? I think it would be actually rather impractical.
If I'm thinking like the extended universe of senses, like the sense of time,
I guess that's true.
That would be dead helpful.
I mean, I would imagine so, but I'm also thinking about it would
increased sight.
Well, even just like smell or hearing, it would be very easy to get very overwhelmed quickly.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've never been a fan of the sense of smell. Just in general, I don't know. It's not really a sense I value much. I guess I'm underappreciating it, but that's just my opinion.
I mean, then you have smell and taste being very closely linked.
Ooh.
And
yeah,
it's very hard to, like, if you've ever had a cold, which I imagine most people have. Your sense of taste almost goes out the window when you lose that sense of smell, because
you're right.
They're very closely linked. Most things just taste kind of bland.
Yeah, and if you don't believe us, just close your nose next time you're eating and see how it turns out.
Yeah. So.
See what the chef thinks of it.
Yeah.
There's.
So I think it would be very quickly. You'd have to learn to control those super senses to not be overwhelmed on a daily basis, because just the enormity of the number of smells and sights and tastes that we and sounds we experience on our day-to-day lives.
Just would it be like a constant anxiety attack?
Yeah, like you've got all this information coming in, and our brain is used to dealing with a certain level, and if you just rapidly increase that certain level,
body enhancement, superpower, and then you need to be tread lightly. You need to be very careful.
Yeah, and if you just certainly increase the sensitivity, like if you've ever played a game with a mouse and you're used, or a gamepad, and you're used to a certain sensitivity, and then you up that sensitivity, it becomes almost unplayable if you go too high, because you're just flailing all over the place without and you have to really practice that that new level of sensitivity.
Of course.
Granted, once you get used to it, everything else would feel kind of sluggish.
True.
But it would just take a lot of getting used to, so tread lightly.
Tread lightly.
And a lot of these things, I feel like you could, once you mastered them, they could be very, 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 very practical and very, very helpful. But
yeah, like if you got used to the heightened senses after a while, then like can you? That would be pretty cool.
That would be very cool, but
I wouldn't have to move up in the classroom anymore because the great eyesight I used to have when I was younger is just sort of slowly going downhill in my teenage years.
Yeah.
Can't imagine what like 60 is going to be like.
Yeah. So just being it would require an adjustment period of getting used to this new lifestyle, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I feel like the superpowers everyone wants is just really closely. I mean, this is pretty obvious if you think about it for like a second, but I feel like the superpowers that are most meaningful to people are, really the ones that are like would affect their life for the most. For like instance, heightened senses. If I feel like a sense is going downhill, like my eyesight, then heightened senses is way more appealing to me. Jacob spends a lot of time in his car, so teleportation is great for him. I didn't really see the appeal in it before he started talking about it. So yeah, it's really just about like who you are. Sense of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always like to have more time. I'd always like to stay longer in the moments that I have, before it moves on to the next one. So that's really that for me.
Yeah.
But I've never made the mistake of wanting to be able to remember everything, like a photographic memory. Because imagine how fast like your brain would fill up, the amount of neuronal connections it would have to make, and
there's a reason why we don't remember everything, and that's just to keep certain things you don't want to remember, and we're kind of running out of time here. This is gone for like 45 minutes, 46 minutes now. So
also just one brief note, if you're interested in the thought experiment of like remembering everything, then there's a great short story you can just find it online called The Truth of Fact, The Truth of Feeling, and it really brought me around from the I'd like to record everything about my life, I'd like to remember everything about my life, into the sort of like just let it go, like live easy, just enjoy the moment.
Right. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting short on time here. So we mentioned very early on. We started off with the ability to stop time, but we didn't even cover the ability to control time. Just like go backward or forward in time, like
or have time move ridiculously slowly in comparison to you.
Yeah.
But going backward, going forward in time, like we didn't even cover just personal time travel, being your own TARDIS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, TARDIS can also move through space, so
time and relative dimension. There we go.
Okay, but that's at least with slowing time, I think that would be functionally the same as being able to move really quickly, because how time dilation works.
Yeah, exactly, which is why I moved off of that. I'm like, we did sort of discuss that.
Yeah, so slowing down time is just time dilation, and you can, if you want a good example of that, just watch the Quicksilver scenes in the X-Men movies. I think that's an excellent example of time dilation.
Yeah. Also great music.
Yeah, indeed. But then we get to the topic of
time travel.
And that's an entire bucket of worms.
Yeah, we're running short on time, so how about we discuss time travel?
Yeah, that's actually another topic that we were thinking about discussing.
We were considering for another episode.
How time travel and parallel universes and that entire can of worms.
Yep.
So
fascinating can of worms.
It is a fascinating can of worms, but I think we're gonna try and close this out on, what do you say, 50 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost there. So
okay.
50 minutes.
So, but okay. So,
I was just gonna make a few closing statements.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't want to tread too much on the time travel idea. So closing statements. Go.
Yeah. So just first of all, a big thank you to anybody that made it this far into the podcast.
You are a trooper.
You are very much a trooper for listening to us just ramble.
This is our first episode, so hopefully we'll get less rambly as time goes on, but we promise nothing.
Yeah, no promises. Perhaps because this is our pilot episode, as it were. This will be a little longer because we just kind of got talking and kind of lost track of time.
Yep.
And heightened senses might have changed that if we want to be self-promoting.
We could. Yeah, and we also have other members of this sort of group. We won't be the only podcasters, so if you're sick of us already, then don't worry. Other people will be here soon.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll sort of talk with them and come up with better ideas.
Yeah, other co-hosts, other ideas, and just as a disclaimer, it's not always going to be something like superpowers. It might. The topic is really dependent.
Really fluid.
It's very fluid.
We have no theme.
We have no theme. No. It's really dependent on like what we want to talk about on a given week. So. Yeah. That's something that is very susceptible, I guess, to change.
Yes, that is very mercurial.
Yes.
Look, we're a vocab podcast now.
So Yeah. So unless there's something that we don't think we can cover in any given amount of time, we might make a part 1 and part 2 discussing the topic in more
True.
than one. But chances are that we'll leave a topic for a singular episode if we think we can discuss it adequately. And this might be a topic. The whole superpowers thing might be a topic that we come back to if there are more superpowers that we find some,
or if there
some interesting asterisks. It's not just what the asterisks are, but if we think it's very interesting.
Yeah, something that we feel we need to share, or if other podcast group members feel like they have something to contribute that they would feel meaningful.
Definitely. So, for now though, thank you once again for listening in. This has been TMI episode Tread Lightly.
Sure. Love it.
And once again, we will discuss what TMI is on a future date. For now, you decide.
Yeah.
You decide. So
completely custom.
Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next podcast.
Nice. Signing out.
This is Jacob and Cyrus signing off.